Hello, my name is Blossums and welcome to another Genshin Impact video, and I finally have gotten my hands on Yunjin. Been wishing on the banner and unfortunately haven't been so lucky, but I finally did manage to snag me at least one copy of Yunjin, and today we're going to be bringing you a build guide on her as I am very excited for this character. She is very cool and has a pretty interesting kit that can apply to a lot of characters and a lot of your off-meta choices if you have them. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the build. Well, first off, to describe Yunjin a bit, she's a 4-star Geopolarm user who focuses around enhancing your other units and her own normal attack damage. And she does this through her elemental burst mainly, that when you cast it, it does some AoE geo damage, and it also increases your normal attack damage dealt by any of your party members based off of her defense. So she's a big defense scaling character, and this buff is no joke. It's pretty cool, and a lot of people have made the comparison that this buff is actually better than Bennett's with some constellations and stuff. So that's pretty cool. So if you love normal attacking with a certain character, Yunjin's going to be a must-have for you to make sure you're dealing the most damage as you can. And if they're a normal attack focused character, but she also has this E skill that kind of works like Beto's, but a little bit different. It deals its damage based off of defense, which is excellent as well, allowing you to just go full into defense. And the way this works like Beto's is you can essentially counter it via her passive here, where if you hit it at the right time, it'll give you the full charge because it has 2 charge levels. But if you simply just hold the button, it'll also get to that charge level after a little bit of time there and deal the full damage. So that's pretty nice. You don't have to be hit, you just have to wait instead. So it's a little bit different, but still very cool, and also provides that cool niche of being able to counter opponents skillfully, which always feels great, but also not missing out on the big damage if you happen to mess up. And I absolutely love that, and I think that's a very cool like change to that kind of mechanic, and I'm really glad she has that. She also has this other passive here that depending on how many different elements you have in the party, you get an increase further on your normal attacks by her defense. So it's like 2.5, 5%, 7.5, and 11.5%. These aren't massive jumps, so you don't have to worry about getting to the full 11.5%. Just going for the 5 or the 7.5 is a-okay, as it's not insanely different between those, but it does increase some of your damage. So if you're already running a rainbow team, then maybe that's going to be even better for you, just adding her in one of your slots. Now, for the most part, Yunjin is a support focused character. Of course, you can try to force her as a main DPS just because she increases her own normal attacks, and if you really like her normal attacks, you want to do those, then those are going to get increased as well. So if you want to go for that, then go for it, but it's certainly not as viable as simply just using her as a support to buff your main DPS's normal attacks. And there's going to be a couple of ways to build her, and we'll get into those in just a minute, but let's briefly talk about her constellations. So Yunjin has a couple of constellations here, and they're all pretty darn good. Her C1 and C2 most notably. Her C1 decreasing the cooldown of her E skill, which is very nice, and then her C2 increasing her normal attack damage even further. This is kind of what I meant by some of the constellations where putting her even above a Bennett buff for your normal attacks, and this really adds to that, and that's very nice. Her C4 here is just kind of a quality of life. Whenever you get a crystallized reaction going, you get an increase in her defense, which is nice, allowing you to deal some extra damage, and that lasts for 12 seconds. And if you weren't paying attention earlier, her elemental burst also lasts for 12 seconds, so you can keep that throughout the entire duration. Same for the C2 as well, that lasts for 12 seconds, which means you're keeping it throughout the entire duration, which is nice. And then her C6 here, the final one, is you just get an increase in normal attack speed, and boy do I want this one, because attack speed increases always feel awesome. So getting a C6 on her would be really fun for me, but of course this is also an increase in your damage directly because it increases the speed there. However, I would say the C2 is the most valuable, and if you don't want to spend past that, then you're going to be a-okay on your Yunjin, as this is a really good stopping point. As for her artifacts, the Husk of Opulent Dreams is of course a dream on her, if you couldn't surmise already, as it gives you plenty of defense, it gives you geo damage bonus and even more defense when you're off the field. So if you're running her as a support, she's typically not going to be on the field that long, meaning she's going to have this buff pretty regularly, and that is awesome. And because she loves defense so much, and most of her damage, except for her elemental burst modifier, scales off of defense, well, defense is just kind of the way to go. If you want a very easy Yunjin build, defense, defense, and defense are all going to be an excellent way to build her, and that's awesome for her. If you have any good circlet defense pieces or goblet defense pieces that have just been lying around, now's your time to put it on her, as she absolutely just loves having as much defense as possible. Now, there are a couple alternatives, though, I will mention here, especially because of the fact that the way you might be using Yunjin might vary. So one of those is going to be, instead of defense on the circlet here, crit rate is also entirely an option. And I say that because a lot of people will probably want their Yunjin to be dealing some solid damage, and I totally understand that. In fact, that's likely what I might be leaning towards on my Yunjin, depending on how I can get all my subsets to go on, like my feather and whatnot, see if I can get enough crit rate. But crit rate here is totally fine, because then your Yunjin is going to be dealing some extra damage herself, and then that way that's just going to feel better for you, but it's not necessarily necessary either, and defense is totally fine here too. Yeah, but some people are going to want to crit rate here because then their Yunjin will be dealing more damage, and that's going to feel better to them, and that's a-okay, because basically the damage you're losing isn't too much, and you are gaining some more consistency on your Yunjin, which is going to be nice, especially since the modifiers on her E skill are pretty big, so I think that's a pretty good trade-off, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's also another way that you can also go for these main stats, and that is the Sands being an energy recharge, because Yunjin does want some solid energy recharge. I'm mostly ignoring my energy recharge needs through substats and my weapon, which we'll go over later, but if you're struggling on getting her burst off of cooldown, then maybe you're going to want an energy recharge Sands. And if that's the case, then you're probably not going to want to go with the crit rate helmet, unless it just has insane defense percent or something, just because you are going to need at least 2 defense percent main stats, in my opinion, to make sure you're getting as much as you can. So you're only going to be able to really trade one of these, out of my opinion. Of course, you could go full main DPS Yunjin with like defense, Geo Goblin, like crit rate, crit damage. If you really want to go that way, that is also totally fine. If you're going for like a main DPS Yunjin, but for support Yunjin, defense is going to be the easiest for most of us, and then just trying to focus on the best substats as possible. Those substats, of course, being crit rate and crit damage, energy recharge as a big priority, and defense percent as a big priority, and a little bit of attack percent if you can find it to fit in there somewhere as well, is definitely going to help you out too. And for those of you going for the crit rate circlet, of course, defense percent is going to be a higher priority for you, and then of course, adjust accordingly. As for the artifacts I'll be using for this video, I'll go over each one so you have an idea of what I'm using, and then we'll move on to the weapons. All right, as for the weapons, I think there really isn't a better option than the Favonius Lance for Yunjin. It works really well for her. There are no defense percent polearms yet, at least, and the Favonius Lance not only gives her plenty of energy recharge, it gives her a nice base attack, and it also just allows you to generate even more particles, helping her energy recharge even more. But that's whenever you get a crit hit, and that gets better with refinements, and you see a refinement 5, it's a 100% chance to happen as long as you crit. So crit is still going to be important on her. That's why you definitely want to have some, and that's why I also say having that crit rate circlet isn't a bad option, and it's totally fine, because it's going to help your Favonius Lance proc even more and allow you to get that elemental burst off of cooldown as much as you can. So honestly, the crit rate circlet with the double defense is just as viable as the full defense, in my opinion, and that's mostly because the Favonius Lance here is going to be providing us a ton of particles, and also just getting us our burst as off of cooldown as much as possible. Now, there are also a couple of other options. A lot of people have been using the deathmatch, because this is the only other polearm that gives you defense, or actually the only polearm that gives you defense with its passive there. So if you are going for a main DPS Yunjin, then the deathmatch is probably going to be the best option for you, unless you have some sort of cracked 5-star option. The deathmatch might be the best just because it gives you some extra defense and some attack along with some crit rate, which is a lot for a good main DPS Yunjin. But also, if you are just looking for some extra crit rate to deal some extra damage, you want to go like a high crit damage Yunjin, then that's totally fine. Deathmatch is cool there too. But for most of us running that support Yunjin, Favonius Lance is going to be the best option. Now, if you don't have access to this, you can go for something like the Ketane Cross Spear, where you get some extra elemental skill damage and you generate some extra energy, but Elemental Mastery is really not going to be helpful for Yunjin unless you're going for some sort of weird archaic Petra like shielder build, which I've tried before, and they're not that bad, but they're not that viable either. Also, Prototype Star Glitter is a decent option as well because you get the energy recharge substat and it increases your normal and charge attack damage. So if you want to do that with Yunjin, then that's pretty good. But for the most part, the best in-slot 4-star for a support Yunjin is going to be Favonius Lance. As for the attributes on my Yunjin, I have her at 1100 attack here, 2000 defense, and 29% crit rate and 126% crit damage, and 166% energy recharge. I would like to get both the crit rate and the energy recharge up a bit more. Getting that crit rate to a more comfortable 40% is definitely going to be more ideal, and then the energy recharge at a comfortable 180 is going to be more ideal because 60 energy is going to be a lot easier to get off a cooldown if you have about 180 energy recharge. Just to let you know, if I put like a crit rate circlet on her, this drops her defense by about 400. So that is a sizable difference because that is going to be hindering your buff on your main DPS. So that's just something to consider. And I wanted to give you guys that number so you guys had a little perspective there. But yeah, that is my Yunjin build for the most part. Definitely want some more crit rate, definitely want some more energy recharge. Let's talk about some teammates she can pair with. All right, when it comes to Yunjin, you'll be happy to know that she technically pairs with everybody because she's buffing normal attack damage. So if you have a character that you just love to use for their normal attacks, and it's like a terrible off-meta pick or something, then Yunjin is going to be your savior, as she's going to make that character much more usable for normal attacks because she buffs those specifically. But she does have some specific characters that she pairs well with in general, and namely Yoimiya. Yoimiya absolutely loves Yunjin. She buffs her a ton, and a lot of you might be worrying about how, you know, she couldn't really be buffing Yoimiya that much because Yoimiya already buffs her normal attack damage so much via her E skill, and the way the math works out, it's basically entirely different stuff. So the damage Yunjin adds onto Yoimiya is totally different, and it does, you know, work out well. So if you're wondering if that was like a diminishing return situation there, it's not. Just to let you know there. So these are a fantastic pairing, and Yoimiya loves Yunjin on her team now. Other interesting things are maybe you like to have Kokomi on some of your teams, and of course she's going to be buffing Kokomi's normal attacks as well. So while you're healing up your team, you could be dealing some extra damage too, and I think that's a pretty cool thing. I know I'm going to be trying that out myself because I love using Kokomi, but other people who maybe like to normal attack with Zhao, she's going to be cool for him as well. And another interesting thing is Tartaglia, just because some of his damage counts as normal attack damage with some of the Riptide stuff. The Riptide stuff, it gets pretty complicated. Some counts as elemental skill, some counts as elemental burst, some counts as normal attack damage. So do look that over because some of that will contribute or get a buff from Yunjin's elemental burst there. And also he takes advantage of the damage in his E skill stance as well. Of course, Razor's going to be excellent. Eula's going to be excellent because you're going to be normal attacking with them as much as possible. And then of course, pairings like Toma, especially at higher constellations, are going to be good, not because we're trying to buff Toma's damage, but because Toma also likes us to normal attack, and he can buff our normal attack damage at some of the constellations. Other characters like Xing Shou and a C6 Fischl are also going to love Yunjin just because they want you to normal attack too. We're not necessarily normal attacking with them, but it's just for team synergy is kind of what I'm saying there. But yeah, as I said, if you have a character that you just like to normal attack with, then she's going to be an awesome pairing for you. Oh, another excellent one I forgot to mention, Keqing is amazing with Yunjin. She loves Yunjin, especially because you're mostly normal attacking with Keqing anyway, and, you know, charge attacking as well. Also, do remember, I don't know if I mentioned this in the video, Yunjin does not buff your charge attacks. So if you're trying to take advantage of characters like Arataki Ito, then you are going to get a buff on your normals, but your charge attacks are going to suffer. Charge attacks on Keqing will suffer, stuff like that. Also, charge attacks on Yanfei will suffer, but her normal attacks will be buffed. So those are just things you want to keep in mind as well. The charge attack is just not buffed there. All right, so we talked about the teams and whatnot. Let's go ahead and bring this team out into the field. I've got Yoimiya, Xing Shou, Yunjin, and Kokomi. Just as an example team, I'll go ahead and show some of Yoimiya's damage without Yunjin, and then I'll go ahead and show it with Yunjin, so you have an idea how much more we're doing. All right, we're at the Homie Masanori here, and I'm just gonna eat some crit rate food for my own sanity so you can see it in a more consistent way, you know, just to benefit all of us here, really. But let's go ahead and see Yoimiya's damage with the normal attack usually. And you see, it's around in the 6k, sometimes hitting the 9, and then, you know, it varies depending on crit. Let's go ahead and show it with Yunjin. And you can see we got about half of our burst there from that E skill. And you can see Yomi is doing significantly more damage now. And that is the benefit of the buff. We're not even adding like elemental reactions on here. So let's go ahead and do that. See if we can get this burst back. We do definitely need a little bit more energy recharge. As I said, 180 is definitely going to be a lot better. But let's go ahead and get everybody going. See how fast we delete Masanori here. Sorry, bud. So yeah, you can see how she can really start to pair with some teams. And I did forget to mention one more thing in the actual artifact section. So any of you who actually made it this far in the video, you know, you're getting a little bonus here. But Yunjin actually does benefit from the Archaic Petra in a pretty interesting way. You are missing a lot out on, of course, the geo damage and the defense percentage there, but the fact that she steps forward when she does her E skill means you can typically pick up the Crystallize immediately for Archaic Petra. So if you really like messing around with Archaic Petra, then that's something you might want to try, but it's definitely not going to be the ideal support Yunjin. But anyway, that's going to be it for the video. Oh, I accidentally hit you. Okay. Anyway, that's going to be it for the video. I hope you guys all enjoyed. I hope I helped you build your Yunjins properly. And let me know if you're building yours differently, as I'd love to see your different builds and who you're pairing her with in the comment section below. But anyway, that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. My name is Blossums, and I'll catch you later. Peace.